We are now on the 3 weeks. And as you know, out of Tisha B'Av, and last week as well, we learned the laws governing the Bet HaMikdash, because by learning the laws of the Bet HaMikdash, we spiritually build it and we hasten its realization. So I wanted to read to you, we're going to analyze, bear with me, it's a bit of Talmudic analysis. You'll see something new, even though what you wrote me yesterday, which is very humble and nice of you, but still, you have to make the Yitzhak also happy sometimes when it comes to learning. So we'll learn something new. And I was preparing last night for the Shir. I didn't remember what I taught at the Shir last year, the year earlier. And I had 3 subjects in mind. And I asked, Nussi, we learned this. He said, we learned all 3. But he said, we should learn it again. Yeah, the Yitzhak doesn't want, you always want something new. We should, to get it clear. So that's true. But we'll learn something new as well. So here's what the Rambam says. The Rambam describes how every day in the Beis HaMikdash, right? So on weekdays before dawn, the Kohanim, this was a select group, would rise and walk through the entire courtyard. This is before dawn, it's still dark, carrying 2 torches of fire. There were 2 groups, and they would meet, and they would say to each other, they would greet each other. The exact words they would say, it's actually relevant. They would say to each other, I don't see it here. Hakol Shalom, everything is peace, everything is peace. And then the Avodah would begin. Shalom, Hakol Shalom, greetings, everything is at peace. And then the order of the service, the Beis HaMikdash, would begin. Says the Rambam. This was the procedure we just described, carrying the torches of fire in their hand. They followed this every night, means just before dawn, with the exception of Friday night. It's now Shabbos morning, in other words. On that night, they did not hold torches in their hand. Instead, they inspected the courtyard. They walked around the peripheral of the Beis HaMikdash, using the lights of the lamp that had been left burning before Shabbos, lights on the wall. Okay, simple halacha. They would carry the lit torches during the week, but not on Shabbos. What's the problem? The problem is that the commentaries ask, why wouldn't they hold the torches even on Shabbos? This is called the Shwarz. What is a Shwarz? A Shwarz means literally something we don't do, and it refers to all rabbinic law. The sages enacted many prohibitions, they're all called Shwarz, and the objective of them all is that to protect our possible transgression of an actual Torah law. Because it's so close to it, you might come to actually transgressing a Torah law. So for example, we're familiar Shabbos, Muktzah, we're not allowed to touch things, even touch or move things, which using them would be an actual transgression. So using matches, for example. You can't strike a fire on Shabbos. That's the Torah prohibits outright. So the sages forbade even holding a box of matches or moving it. For fear, you'll forget since you're holding it and you'll strike it. And hundreds of other laws of Muktzah, for example, and many other areas of Jewish law. So what's the problem? The question is, in the Beis HaMikdash, the sages did not apply any of their laws, any of their protective laws. It's only outside the Beis HaMikdash. In the Beis HaMikdash, they observed only the actual Torah law. And the reason is, the whole reason the sages enacted their laws were because a person might be forgetful. You have to put a fence around it and stop you from even getting close to the actual prohibition. Not in the Beis HaMikdash, which is a holy place where Hashem is revealed, and the Kohanim and the Leviim, they're very in tune to where they are, what they're doing. We're not afraid that they will inadvertently come to transgress an actual Torah law when there's no need to protect it by putting a fence and keeping them one step away, by prohibiting even an activity that resembles or close to it. Clear? So there's Ein Shvuz B'Mikdash. there is no rabbinic protective laws in the Beis Hamikdash. There's no need for it. So the question here is, carrying a lit torch, a lit fire on Shabbos is not a Torah prohibition. The sages forbade it, because if you're going to carry it, you might extinguish it, you might light another one, you might forget. But there's no you might forget in the Beis Hamikdash. So why did they enact such a law that they shouldn't, on Shabbos morning, they shouldn't at dawn, they shouldn't go around like they do during the week holding the lit torches? It's only a rabbinic law, and rabbinic law doesn't apply in the Beis Hamikdash. Question's clear? Yeah. So there's an attempted answer. The Kesed Mishnah gives an answer. He says like this: since we could accomplish the same thing by using the fire, they could see each other walk around because there were lit fires on the walls already there. So why do we have to? So the sage in this case, don't take the torch. You're not compromising anything really. You can see because there's light burning already on the wall. So in this case, the sages said don't, because you're going to accomplish the same thing without actually carrying the torch in your hand. So why carry the torch in your hand? True, there's no rabbinic law enacted in the Beis Hamikdash, but in this case, since we're not compromising what has to be achieved, then in this case, they said don't take it and use the lights that are already lit before Shabbos on the wall, on the walls of the courtyard. That's his answer. But the Rebbe rejects this and says this is not a satisfactory answer, because here's an interesting example where you could achieve the same goal without transgressing rabbinic law in the Beis Hamikdash, and we're not concerned with that. What's the case? Yom Kippur, coming up to Yom Kippur. So for us, friends, as we all know, Yom Kippur, it's forbidden to bathe, forbidden to wash. But the high priest, the Kohen Gadol, actually immersed in a mikveh, a special mikveh, 5 times. A mikveh that was constructed in the infrastructure of the Beis Hamikdash. On 5 occasions, he immersed. Every time he changed his clothing from from the Kohen Gadol, the high priest clothing, to the simple white vestments of an ordinary Kohen, which he used to go into the Holy of Holies. Every time he changed his clothing, he immersed in the mikveh. Now, the law is, the mikveh is cold, obviously. What if he's old or frail? And he'll get sick. So you have to warm the mikveh. So how do we warm the mikveh? So the halacha is, you can take iron, white hot iron slabs that have been placed on the fire before Yom Kippur. And they took them and they put them into the mikveh and they heated the mikveh. Now, there's another way to do that. You can just have hot water that had been boiling before Yom Kippur and then pour in, large containers of hot water. What's the difference? Pouring in hot water is not even a rabbinic prohibition. That's no problem. You can put hot water into cold water to warm it up. That's no problem at all. But it is a rabbinic prohibition to put in the slabs. Why? Because if a person here's the Torah prohibition. How do you make iron? You heat it up, whatever, and then you cool it. If a person's putting it in cold water in order to cool it, that's an outright Torah prohibition. You're actually finishing the production of the iron. But if your intent is to complete it, but if your intent, from the Torah perspective, if your intent that you put these hot iron slabs in the water is not to complete the slab, you don't care about the slab, but you want to heat the water, there's no Torah prohibition for that. Your intention here is not to complete the production of the iron rods. It's only rabbinic law, you're following, to put it in. The sages forbade. Sages forbade to put in hot iron slabs in water on Shabbos, even though your intent is to heat the water, because someone will look at that or you might forget, and then you'll do it for the purpose of the slabs themselves. So the sages forbade it. But in the Beis Hamikdash, there is no rabbinic law. So that's why they said, no problem, take the iron slabs, we're doing it, put it into the water to heat the water for the high priest. Normally, you wouldn't be able to do that on Shabbos, it's rabbinically, but there's no rabbinic law when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash. And what do we see? There's another solution, just pour it in hot water, and you won't even transgress rabbinic law. So we see that no, when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash, there's just no consideration of rabbinic law. We don't consider, do we get the same effect without it? The Kesef Mishnah wanted to answer, why aren't they carrying the torches? Because there's already anyway lit fire. The Rabbi said, but wait a minute, they did it every day that way. That's the way they do it. There's no anyway. You do it the right way. All rabbinic laws completely suspended. There's no consideration. So the Kesef Mishnah says, why not respect rabbinic law since anyway you have the same result? Here's an example of the Kohen Gadol. The same result. We could use hot water, but no, we can put in iron slabs because we see from here, bottom line, rabbinic law, Shwarz, does not apply in the Beis HaMikdash. So why do they not carry the torches on Shabbos? There are other attempted answers, but we're running out of time a little bit, so I want to get straight to the answer. That's very interesting. I guess there's another example where rabbinic law is completely suspended, also Yom Kippur. Another example. Yom Kippur night, just to illustrate the point, how we don't even consider it, even though there are other alternatives. Yom Kippur night, the Kohen Gadol to be up all night. Couldn't sleep. The reason? Basically, to ensure that he didn't become involuntarily impure, a nocturnal emission, which means he couldn't function the next day as a Kohen Gadol. Very, very embarrassing for him. It wasn't a good sign, and he had to have a replacement. So they kept him up all night. So what did he do? If he was a scholar, he learned himself all night. He learned, he said Tehillim. And if not, they would read to him passages. But either way, to keep him from falling asleep, there was a young Kohanim would stand there, and if they see him dozing, they go like this. They snap their fingers, and they wake him up. Now, friends, you should know, clapping your hands, we don't do this on Shabbos. We don't do this on Shabbos, only with this whole, when you're singing a niggin, you could. The reason is, the sages prohibited any kind of action like this. It'll lead to drumming and then fixing a drum. It's like protecting the possibility of getting involved in using instruments. Basically, for the fear that you get all excited and you'll get to take your instrument and start drumming and start playing. It's a rabbinic law. Nowadays we do because we can't fix instruments, we don't use instruments. So nowadays we do clap our hands and bang the table when we sing on Shabbos and Yom Tov. But the law originally was that you don't drum with your hands or clap your hands because it could lead very easily to using an instrument. So here they're clapping their hands. They could wake him other ways. They could just, move his shoulder. They could just shout at him, Kohen Gadol, don't sleep, and wake up, whatever. There's ways to keep him awake. Yet, alternatively, without transgressing rabbinic law, but the halacha is, the Mishnah says, no, they clap their hands. Because why? Because in the Beis HaMikdash, there's no rabbinic law. They just don't consider it. Let's do it if we can get the end result anyway. No, it's suspended completely. So back to our question, why aren't they taking the fire on Shabbos morning? It's under rabbinic law to hold the lit torch. Okay, so we'll get straight to the answer in a very, very important message. The law I just told you, very important point coming now, friends. You see where we're going with this. This halacha I told you is the end of Hilchos Beis HaBchira. Hilchos Beis HaBchira are the laws of the construction, listen carefully, the construction of the Beis HaMikdash, literally. The plans, how to build it, and all of the details of how the Beis HaMikdash is built. Why is the Rambam telling us, this is the final law, about this inspection every morning before dawn that happened in the Beis HaMikdash? That doesn't belong here in the laws of construction. It belongs in the laws that deal with the actual avodah, the actual service. He has an entire section that in his halacha that deals with the actual avodah, the actual work, the daily sacrifices and the lighting of the menorah, all the things that we do every day. That's where that belongs. Should be the first law, in fact, or the final law. How does the day begin? With this inspection. Or the final law, how does the day end? Why is he telling us the law of the inspection of the Beis HaMikdash in Hilchos Beis HaBchira, in the laws of construction, when it's not a construction law, it's a law that's related to the actual service? It should be in Hilchos Tmidim Musafim, the laws of the daily service in the temple. That's where it belongs, not here. So a very deep answer to this, a very profound answer. Before that, a similar question, Rambam describes also where they position the guards There were guards, Kohanim, Levim, positioned in different positions throughout the whole temple, Beis Hamikdash complex. And he just also mentions that law, also the laws of construction. But the same question, that's an act, an activity, a service. It doesn't belong to the laws of construction, but it belongs in the laws of the service. That too is in here. The answer, my friends, is this. Hashem's house doesn't need guards. So why are they guards? It's an expression of honor and respect. Respect for the house of Hashem. That's why there are guards. That's why we're answering now why discussing, we'll soon get to our case, why discussing the laws of the shmir, of the guarding in the laws of construction, because it's a construction law. When the building is not really finished before it has these ceremonial guards positioned in all of these places that Rambam describes. They're not doing a service, like bringing an offering, lighting the menorah. This has to do with the building itself. A person comes there and looks at the building, and he sees that the building has these guards that enhances the prestige and honor of the building. So it's a law in construction. That's why the Rambam discusses covered. It's covered abayis, the honor, not avodah of the bayis, service in the house. It's the honor of the house. What's the honor of the house? The honor is to have what? Is to have guards around it. Likewise, the inspection every morning to see everything is in order. This is not so much a service, but it's an act of honor. And that's why when they meet each other, they don't say, is everything in order? They say, I said before, Shalom, Shalom. They greet each other. The words were, Hakol Shalom, everything is peace. That's an unusual way of saying. They should have said, everything is in order. Hakol Beseder. But Hakol Shalom. Shalom is actually the name of Hashem, peace. And they're invoking Hashem's name here because it was a ceremonial thing. It was a ceremonial inspection each morning that enhanced the glory and the honor of the house. And therefore, the Rebbe answers, since it's not an actual, so when you're doing a service, an actual avodah, so rabbinic law suspended, and do it. Just do it. We don't worry about any rabbinic law. Do what you have to do and do it the best way. And we only consider actual Torah law. But here it's not a service. Here it's a manner of honor and respect. If you're doing honor and respect, and you can do it by respecting rabbinic law elsewhere, then yes. Because we're not looking for a result here. Just get the result done and forget about all rabbinic considerations. It's not a result. This honor God was not a functional thing. And this inspection wasn't a functional thing. It was a mark of respect. So if it's a mark of respect of the house, so here, this one exception, we say, you don't have to hold the torches in your hand. This is all ceremonial. So you can do this by even respecting this rabbinic law, which usually doesn't apply in the Beis Hamikdash. Here we'll bring every nuance of Jewish observance into the picture because it's a respectful act. Clear? We got the answer is clear. Since it's not an avodah, it's covered. So for covered, have a respect. Then we'll respect also rabbinic law. There's no reason to have to actually hold the torch. Because it's not an actual avodah. If you're doing something the Torah commands to have to do, then rabbinic law doesn't apply in the Beis Hamikdash. But in this case, since it's an honor God, we want to do this in the most, in other words, the people watching that, they're seeing that. And they know that on Shabbos, you don't carry a torch. So, and here they're carrying a torch. So they have to say, oh, in the Beis Hamikdash, we don't worry about rabbinic law. It's a question, it's an answer. But in this case, we don't carry it because what we're doing is to invoke a sense of awe and respect by everybody that views it. And they don't carry their torches in their homes on Shabbos, lit fires. They don't do it in the Beis Hamikdash. It's a whole different objective, not an observance, but a mark of respect and honor. We'll do that, observing every nuance, necessary or not necessary. I want to move on to the question. That's why on Shabbos, they did not carry the torch, even though it's rabbinic law. And that answer is, this isn't a service in the temple, this is a mark of honor. And that's done respecting every nuance and every possible law attached to it applicable or not applicable in this case. Even though you don't have to, but we're going to observe it because this is an honor thing. Now, we might take the following lesson, friends. The Beis HaMikdash, the house, is a reflection of all our own homes, our own relationship with our wife at home. In fact, the whole point of creation is Hashem wants us to make this world a home for him. And one day the whole world's going to become, as it were, the Beis HaMikdash. That's the whole objective of life. So here's the thing. Obviously at home, dealing with your wife and the children, I speak specifically about the wife because that's what makes it the home, is the father, the mother. So just like in the Beis HaMikdash, rabbinic law didn't apply, the niceties and the way, the formalities that we deal with the world outside of us, don't apply at home. The way we speak to each other, we don't have this protocol, we don't have these niceties, these formalities that you do when you're outside the house. Why? Because you're at home. You're at home. This is a very intimate, personal relationship. It's your wife, it's your children. And therefore, there's no need for the formal protocol of what I'm looking for, not just niceties, but manners. There's a term for this, but manners, where we conduct ourselves with others outside, the formal greetings, and so on, and the manners, the way you speak, doesn't apply and should not apply. It should not apply at home with wife and children where it's very intimate and close and it's not formal. So that explains right there why the rabbinic law, the protective laws, apply outside the Beis HaMikdash. They don't apply inside the Beis HaMikdash, because when you're at home, you're at home. And you're not behaving formally. Again, the word escapes me, but the word for etiquette and protocol don't apply in the privacy of the bedroom, in the privacy and the protocol. Formality is not formality there, right? And in general in the home. True. That comes a very powerfulness. That is true. And the general engagements and the functional things in the house, it's not with the same formality and etiquette that you're sitting at the outside, you're dealing with the world outside it. What did we just learn now? When it comes to the respect, not service, not actually a functional thing, but expressing your respect, here, respecting the respect, here all of a sudden the formality and the niceties apply. What does this mean? Because human nature we take for granted. We take everything that happens, that we live with constantly, and that I don't see it's being threatened or being taken away. Only when it's being threatened, then all of a sudden we don't take it for granted. But it's not being threatened, I'm not facing any possible threat, but I take it for granted. Take my health for granted, take my wife for granted, take my children for granted, take my business for granted. Hopefully, nothing's threatening it. So here the Torah says, the law is saying, the respect that we have, that I have a house, meaning I have a wife, it's not to be taken for granted. The respect thing, the everyday engagements, okay, there's not a formality, it's familiar, and there should be that familiar, non-formal engagement. You don't address each other like you address a stranger. But then there's a big context to all of this. The awe and respect, that's got to be formal. That's really formal to the ultimate degree. There were guards around the Beis HaMikdash. Do you need those guards? Did we need this whole inspection? What was it for? It's all covered habayis. It's all part of, there's no house without it. This is not, as we said, we just learned, right? He doesn't talk about the guarding or that inspection in the section dealing with laws, because this isn't dealing with service. This isn't about service. This is the wow factor. There's a Beis HaMikdash. I'm married. Wow, I can't believe I'm married to you. How can you have this host, this great gift from Hashem, that I have a home and a wife and children? This is a respect thing. When it comes to that, there's no familiarity with that. That's formal. And there's a fence around that, meaning to say, you step back. That's where rabbinic law puts a fence. Whoa, don't get even close to tampering with this. Don't get even close to taking this for granted. Don't become familiar with this. So again, the guards around the base of Mikdash, what do they do? You know, so God needs guards. They need to make an inspection, Hashem's. The night before, nobody gets in there. Everything was the way it was. They'll need to inspect. It's showing our awe and respect. And when you show awe and respect, here it's with every nuance and every formality. So I might want to suggest, Friday night, we're talking for this is Shabbos. That's when this law applies. So you say Friday night and you stand there holding the Kiddush cup in your hand. And before that, you're saying the Eishes Chayil. It's a time to step back for a moment and say, be humbled by the gift that Hashem has given. This is not entitlement. This is a gift to have a home and the children. Hashem bless them all to be healthy and well, and nachas and simchas. And that is so awesome that it's formal. And we step back. What's rabbinic law? Steps you back. And we're humble in awe of the home that Hashem has given us the privilege to be able to build. So these laws of the inspection, they didn't carry the torch because we're observing every nuance of formality. Here we observe it. And the honor God. This is a matter of awe, and it's not a familiar, easy thing. This is an awesome acknowledgement. And at the time is Friday night. Shabbos. The whole week we're running. If time, Shabbos we step back and we're in awe. Wow. And there's a profound, deep formality, not for a stranger, a formality for the gift of you. And one more word, and recognition. The recognition, a very deep thing I'm going to say now. The recognition is that as familiar as I am with you, I know you like nobody knows you, my wife and children. I acknowledge there's a divine spark there that is awesome, that is beyond. This is a neshama thing. This is that we got together as a gift from Hashem. It's not our doing. It's all min hashamayim. It's bashert. And there's a mystery. So there's something not familiar. Not familiar. What's not familiar is the mystery how our neshamas met, and the divine spark that is beyond my understanding or experience, but I know I have it, and I know you have it, and I'm in awe of it within you, and awe of it within me too. It's Hashem's gift. And that's what makes the house. That's the Bet HaMikdash. These are the final laws of the construction of the Beis HaMikdash. In other words, the Rambam is saying, you build this beautiful building, but if you're not in awe of it, the ceremonial guards and the inspection that is done in an awesome way, then we haven't completed the building. It's a beautiful building. It's not a home. A home is awesome. Wow. So, dear friends, may Hashem grant, we went that over time, I'm sorry, that we merit the building of the base. It's already built. It has to descend from heaven in a real way, and we will be there, and we will be in awe of it, as described here. At the same time, there's also the familiar, intimate, easy, loving engagement. There's that aspect as well, having a good time, fun. That's part of marriage too, definitely a huge part. But the context of it is awe and respect. That's the final law, the final context that embraces all of the daily interactions of joy and of love and of pleasure and so on. But all of the ups and downs that comes along with that as well. Have a wonderful Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbos.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Good Shabbos, everyone.
Beautiful.
Bye. Shabbos. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Shabbos.
Das ist was machst du?